Hello, my name is Brittany Patterson, currently attending Charis Bible College. I'm from Chicago, Illinois. I am a Minneapolis student due to graduate in May of 2023. I've lived a very complicated, interesting, diverse life. Most of it, if I could be frank, I didn't deserve it. I didn't deserve to be that kid growing up in that environment to these people. But when I was in it, it didn't feel like that. It felt fun. It felt natural. Growing up in the neighborhood I grew up in, violence was normal. Prostitution, drugs, gangbanging, like that's normal. Like that's my life, you know? And I just remember being a kid, it was so fun. It was like every day was fun. But I just remember a point where it wasn't fun anymore. And I think that what was happening was my mother's love was shielding me in many ways from the reality of what was happening. I didn't see my dad in my home. I didn't have my mom always there with me. And it was like, it's this really strange upbringing. It was many people kind of raising me. The norm is police sirens and fighting and shooting and dysfunction. But in my mind, that's not bad, that's love. Because no matter how that day goes, right? At the end of the day, everybody comes back together. Like I never thought to aspire to be a video girl or to date drug dealers and things like that. I never would have thought of that as something you shouldn't do because that's my normal. And I never thought that to hit people you love was bad because that was normal. A norm is you're sitting down, you're eating dinner, and you can hear the outside like brewing. You know to get on the floor because the bullets are happening. And this is dinner time. About 13, one day my mom didn't come home. I was in like 7th grade. And it was me and my little brother. I just remember him saying like, where's mom, where's mom, where's mom? And I was like, I don't know, but we gotta get to school. That day, my godmom comes to pick me up. And she told me, your mother does not look the same. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Like, what does this all mean? Her face doesn't look the same. When I walked in, I remember my little brother kind of like crawling up under her. And when I looked at my mother's face, it was completely rearranged. And my mother is a very beautiful woman, very beautiful. And all I knew of my mother was perfection. She's like the source of my joy. And I watched somebody ruin that. I think finally it all caught up. And I remember that day I had to be, probably 11 or 12, because 13, something else crazy happened. But I remember that day looking my mother straight in the face and knowing I was no longer a kid. And that not only was I no longer a kid, my heart was hard. Because I was pissed, I was angry, and I was mad. And I knew she was picking something over me. And when that happens to you as a kid, if you don't really have a solid foundation with Christ, I think that's the point when the world kind of steps in. And then the voice of God gets weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. And then you become rebellious. My life at that point just becomes very chaotic. I mean, death, adolescent dating, just being adolescent abuse, could you imagine your 14-year-old daughter being domestically abused, domestically assaulted? And this was my normal, and this was love. So if we speed it up, I knew I had to leave that place about 5 or 6 years ago. And that's when I came to Minnesota because Chicago had just gotten too bad. And even though something can be really big, it could be very small. Because if your brain or your sociological like construct is only wired one way, you can't see life outside of that. So somebody saying, oh, move to another side of town, that's not how that works, because your mind is set up to even put yourself back around similar people, which will take you back to where you come from, you know? I started having this feeling like I didn't want to die, but if I stayed, I would. So I come to Minnesota. Now I'm like, yeah, I got my new life and everything's gonna be good. And I start making money. The problem is the devil knows that you don't know. And you're sociologically wired to stay how you are. You're really just like on a hamster wheel and you're about to jump on another one. So when I came to Minnesota, all those habits I thought I left resurfaced with a vengeance. It was really weird though this time. I was getting disgusted with my ways and myself, and disgusted with being like on this repetitive circle, this never-ending circle of trauma, and seeing this woman on the inside of me that wanted to live, but it was like I couldn't. I want to fly. I can see I can have a husband. I can see I can have a life, and I'm just this beautiful being, but everything that was manifesting was ugly. People could say things that were accurate but weren't accurate, because I'm like, that's not who I am. And if you really knew who I was, you would probably love me. But it was like I was chained down to everything I had come from, but I had no way of knowing how to get out of it. And right before I left, my brother's life was spiraling out of control. 2 weeks before I left, one of his friends had gotten murdered. He's like this tough dude and all his friends are out there, but he's calling for me because I get it. And in the middle of our hell, we had warmth, and the world was stripping that from him. So I knew I had to leave. So when I come to Minnesota, I'm thinking things are changing, and they're not. I get into a domestic relationship and I hide it, and I go to work every day. Still going out, still drinking, getting hit on, but it wasn't like it was just him. It was me and my demons manifesting. So I couldn't even say I was in an abusive relationship because I myself was the abuser. So it was this weird entanglement of two people who wanted love that didn't know how to love. And then eventually we had a kid together. And that didn't, it just all blew up in smoke. I went back home one more time, and I remember I was laying down, and I lived in what's like, I hate to say it, it's called like a trap house. And a lot of bad activity went on in that house, but that was my home. But I remember I woke up, and I don't know if it was God sending me something that was so clear that it would make me understand, if you don't leave, you're going down with this. And I knew not to go back. The following week, my dog got shot like 8 or 9 times. Right after that, they kicked that door in and raided that house. I said, I can't go back, because if I go back, I'll die. In 2020, I was trying to get my life on track. I got the condo of my dreams. I'm doing well. I'm doing good. Once again, that's why this has a theme, a running theme. I'm thinking I'm doing good. An old friend comes around. It's like the devil knew me. You know what? I know what friend is saying. I know what to do. So something kept telling me, don't go outside. And I went. And that night was nothing worse than a red flag. I ended up getting attacked by a young man, my friend, and another set of girls. The following day, I realized I had a brain injury. I thought that would go away. Like, it was just, that was normal. Oh, somebody gets shot, they recover. This happened, somebody recovered. This happened. No. This has been with me for 2.5 years. And then to top it all off, in November, my brother, my best friend, the thing that got me through that hell, the thing that kept me safe, my protector, my guide, my nurturer. He was struggling in 2020 really bad with alcohol abuse and different things. I had just gotten off the phone with him, and I remember I told him, like, you sound distracted. So you see, the Holy Spirit is still trying to send me these signals like, hey, it's another voice in there. You need to listen. The Holy Spirit is telling me that something's off, but I don't know the Holy Spirit well enough to understand that that's what that is. So I told him, like, no, you sound busy. You sound distracted. And he was like, I'm okay. And I was like, okay, I love you. And he didn't say I love you back, but he texted me, I love you. And I knew what that meant. I'm around some people I can't talk around, but I love you and I hear you. And so as I was checking out the hospital, they told me to check my phone. And that's when I heard the news nobody wants to hear. And that was somebody had killed my brother. I can't really tell you what that does to someone like me. It did something to me I can't describe. I went on this downward spiral of mental torment. For the first time, I found something that made me realize I had no purpose in living. And it was manifesting in my mind and in my body. My brain was acting crazy, and I had just opened a business. It was so chaotic that I looked out the window. I said, I see how people kill themselves. I see it. It's clear. And I sat on the back of the bed. I don't know what made me say it. I don't know why I said it, because I always believed in God. I just didn't believe in Jesus. I said, if I don't get your son today, I'm going to die. And so the next week, this girl, she invites me to church. That's odd, right? I say, if I don't get your son today, I'm going to die. And trust me, it don't sound like that when you're saying it. It's very like, it's dramatic. So I go to this church, and this pastor's there, and he is talking, and the words are coming alive. This man is speaking. That same voice goes off. He says he went to school. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to ask him. Because like now I'm a person that has to live from my inner, because when you survive this stuff, it comes a point where you just know. When that voice tells you, don't go left, don't go right, don't go home, don't do this, don't do that, you start listening. So it said, that man went to school. So I walked up to that man. That's the point when I knew it got real. That man prayed with me for 2 days, and I would sit up under his teachings. And so I went to him, I said, what school did you go to? And he's like, I went to Charis. And I was like, what's that? And he's like, yeah, Charis Bible College. I'm like, all right, say less. So I leave that day. I go research it. This man comes on the screen and he's just talking. He's like the inside of me, but the part I don't do out loud. It was Andrew Womack, and he was he was different. He was just everything that I wanted to be. He was in his skin. He was unapologetic. He wasn't afraid to say it how it is. He isn't afraid to hold you accountable. And I was like, I gotta go there. Because if I'm ever gonna live, my freedom is wrapped up in finding that space. And I need to be that person to be this level of change in this world. Because if in fact I've been spared this long, that's the next answer. And I knew that that answer was locked up in this school. So I have done, through the power of the Lord, everything humanly possible to stay the course at Charis. Things that I'm pretty sure people need medicine for. Mental barriers, like my front of my brain used to race. I hear people take medicine for that. I no longer drink. I don't go out to clubs Music doesn't sound the same. I don't even know how to dress anymore. And the one thing that I will add that has happened in this whole experience of me coming to know Jesus through Charis is I got my smile back. When you have been the places I've been, seen the things I've seen, and learned not to trust anybody, because trust will get you killed. It is an awesome day when I seen that girl who could have contemplated suicide turn around and say, the joy of the Lord is my strength. And mean it. That's my testimony in short. God is real. And I can say I did discover more about the word, more about the Lord, and more about the Lord's joy right here at Charis.